Competition isn't working well for Kiwi consumers. Definitely there's enforcement, and we've got quite a number of open investigations. There are around 14 within the Commission. We've also got the criminal cases against 2PAC and Woolworths that were announced at the end of last year. We probably need another wholesaler. A third player in the market would be a good way to increase the competition.
Kia ora koutou, welcome to Business Desk with Pierre van Heerden, the Grocery Commissioner. The Finance Minister has put the grocery trade on notice that she's considering divestment, the breakup of some part of the wholesale or the retail trade, maybe both. Do you think it will get to that?
Well, it's really a political decision that needs to be taken.
Did it surprise you?
Look, in our annual report and in our market study, we've been clear that competition isn't working well for Kiwi consumers and that effectively a third player in the market would be a good way to increase the competition. And that's a third national player.
And that third player, you're kind of agnostic about whether it's created by breaking up an existing chain or allowing a completely separate player in?
Yes, look, a third player, whichever way they come in, I'd like to see action sooner rather than later. If another player comes into the market, as we've seen in other countries, like Australia, where Aldi went in, it takes 10 to 12 years for them to actually get to a substantial size. So either we need a large player coming in who can get scale quickly, or any other options that are available. And that's what I believe the Minister's looking at.
Which would help competition more, do you think, if they potentially looked at separating the wholesale part from the retail or breaking up the retail part?
Internationally, most large retailers are vertically integrated. So they've got supermarkets and they've got wholesale. So we probably need another wholesaler. And that's where the wholesale code comes in, where the current retailers or supermarkets have to have a wholesale offering as well. And we've currently got an inquiry on that because we don't believe it's actually fulfilling its potential because of the low volume and the low numbers that are customers within the wholesale regime. We don't believe that all of the benefits, especially for smaller suppliers, are actually providing the results that they should be.
Why is that?
There are a lot of carve-outs allowed in the code, and that basically means that larger supermarkets can transfer some of their costs and risks onto suppliers, and those were put into the first code. So we're looking at each one of those. We are getting feedback from both suppliers and the supermarkets as to what should we be doing about that. And then just overall to make sure that the code is simple. It's not over complex, so that the smaller suppliers especially can gain from it.
When you're talking about carve-outs, are you talking there about trade funding, basically, about the kind of payments?
It's a whole host of things that are carved out where it says, for instance, let's take merchandising as an example. Traditionally, a retailer would do all the merchandising and they don't charge for that. Well, the code actually allows for a carve-out if the supplier agrees with the retailer, and then they get charged a fee for that. However, for many suppliers, they're afraid of the larger retailers, and if they are told, look, this is what's needed, that's what they accept. So we want to make sure that it's a lot more transparent and that that will actually help those smaller suppliers.
That trade spend, I think in the last grocery report, or maybe even in the market review, it's like billions of dollars we're talking about here. Why is there not more understood about that? It seems like it's very briefly mentioned that there's potentially billions of dollars flying from suppliers to supermarkets that's not counted in the costs they say that they're having to pay for those supplies.
Trade spend's a very interesting aspect because as a consumer, you walk into the supermarket and you see your favorite product on special. And we all love a special, especially in New Zealand. So you think the supermarket's doing you a favor by putting it on special and they foregoing some of their profits. It's actually the supplier paying for those promotions. New Zealand is one of the highest promoted countries in the world. What we see in Australia is, in the latest ACCC report, about 50% of products they found in supermarkets are on special. The advent of Aldi, though, has pulled that back somewhat, because Aldi doesn't do the high-low, what we call high-low specials. They have a more consistent price every day. And that's something that I've called for before and said we should be looking at a more consistent pricing, so that when you're going into a supermarket, it's not a lucky packet draw, is your product on special or isn't it? But that you can, in fact, know this is the price that you're going to pay for your product, and you don't have to wait 2 weeks for it to come back on special again to buy it. So it's a lot of money that goes in there that flows from Supplier, and it's normally done on scan. So in other words, if you scan the product out and pay at the till, that goes through to, and the supplier pays the retailer whatever they've agreed on in terms of the special. So it's the supplier funding it, but effectively if not as much went into promotions, the overall everyday price could actually come down.
It's part of the criticism that's come through in some of the open submissions we've seen from suppliers and others. They're saying, hey, what are you doing to actually get out there and check whether or not the code's being applied? What are you doing? Are you getting in there and looking at the agreements that suppliers and supermarkets have?
That is absolutely part of it. And we also talk to a lot of suppliers. We've got the anonymous reporting tool that we utilize. That was specifically made for cartels, so it tells you the level of security around it. We're using that for those that are afraid to come forward. But then we also have had a recent survey where we had more than 440 suppliers talk to us and provide us their views. I regularly get out and speak at various engagements, and then many come and speak to me directly as well. And I would just like to encourage all the suppliers out there, if there is an issue, please contact either myself directly or the team, because we are keen to make sure that the regulations that have been put in place are utilized effectively. And if they aren't, we want to make sure that we take action or modify them. And that comes back to the supply code that we're busy reviewing at the moment.
Within that role that you've got, there'd be some enforcement as well, yeah? How many open investigations would you say you're running at the moment?
There are around 14 within the Commission currently open, and those can vary from day to day, as ones may be closed out, because not every investigation leads to court action. Some may lead to warnings, some of them might just lead to letter of compliance. We've also got the criminal cases against 2 Pack and Saves and Woolworths that were announced at the end of last year. But there are a number of others that are being looked at, and that is across all of our tools. So it's Fair Trading, Commerce Act, and the Grocery Competition Act.
It's a frustration for a lot of people, whether they're suppliers or consumers. They kind of feel like nothing much has changed. And the narrative we get is that nothing much can change just because there's so much geography, everything else conspiring against us. With the business of food investigations we've been looking at, there is a lot more to consider than just waving a magic wand and saying we're open for business, please come.
There's no silver bullet. If that was the case, it would be very easy. And that is why the work that the Commerce Commission is doing is really important and complementary to what the government is doing.
For more on the business of food, go to businessdesk.co.nz. Thanks for watching.